Hi, our very special guest tonight is Nina Streich, one of the organizers behind the June 12th rally. And how are you doing, Nina?
Good, how about you?
Good. I'm glad you could make it tonight because the rally was one of the most important things that probably ever happened in the city. And I'd like to ask you some general questions about how it was conceived and how it was organized and about how long it took to get it together.
Well, the idea of the rally really came from the non-governmental organizations within the United Nations after the first United Nations Special Session on Disarmament in 1978. There was an anti-nuke rally outside coinciding with the special session, and following that, when a second special session was decided on, some of the non-governmental organization coordinators came to the groups who coordinated the demonstration outside and said, this time you have to do the biggest demonstration you've ever even thought of doing. And that was the germ of the idea. And the organization really took a little over a year, with the last 6 months building to a real fever pitch.
And how many people would you say showed up at that rally?
Well, we're pretty confident that it was over 1 million. It's definitely the biggest demonstration in the city's history, and most people are most of the organizers of all the civil rights demonstrations, the anti-Vietnam demonstrations in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all think that it's probably the biggest demonstration in U.S. history.
I would say one of the major concerns of the committee was to get people to finally realize what's going on. Here we have 1 million people and we're all saying something, and yet Caspar Weinberger was sitting back and sneezing at the whole thing. What was the feeling around the office at that time?
Well, we were quite amused by Weinberger coming off the golf course on Saturday afternoon saying, oh, it doesn't mean anything. You know, we thought that his just making that statement on Saturday afternoon had some, the demonstration had some impact on the government. The delegates at the United Nations session were all very impressed. Many of them did march and participate in the demonstration, and that, although it hasn't had any immediate impact either on the special session itself or in any government policy, everything is a step towards it, and the public sentiment on the issue is obviously so high that it is making a very, very definite mark.
For the people that didn't have a chance to attend the rally or who were out of state, watching the media that was coming out, the conventional media, the press, how do you feel that they covered the event?
I think the event was covered by the media with surprising seriousness. Usually demonstrations have been covered as, being a bunch of hippies just coming out for a day, a romp in the sun, or during the Vietnam War, the demonstrators were seen as being people just looking for trouble, against doing anything, lazy bums or whatever. Demonstrators for anything are usually perceived by the media to be negative elements when from an organizer's point of view, we're very positive. We always have a very positive statement to make. Now, I think the media took it very positively and was very supportive in their coverage. Obviously, I would have been interested in a broader coverage of more of the issues than actually took place, but the coverage was very good.
Okay, we'll be right back after this clip from Atomic Cafe. That was a very interesting clip from Atomic Cafe. The movie was put together with governmental clips of what they showed to military people and to sort of allay the public in general during the 40s and 50s. But today, how are people getting their information? Are they getting the same kind of distorted facts? Are they being laid too much? Do they know what's really going on, what the real issue is?
Well, I think very few people really know what's really going on. A lot of the information comes from, or all the information that is readily available comes from the government, whose interest is not in informing the people about the real issues around the nuclear weapons issue or the nuclear power issue. And what our job is in the movement is to disseminate information that, like Atomic Cafe does, counteracts the effect of the government propaganda.
The government would like to let us think that we can survive a limited nuclear war, and that defense is a very good deterrent, and also that if the USSR had ever evacuated its cities, which it probably would before they dropped a bomb, that we would also evacuate our cities. Those are the three main myths that are going around. And how is the movement getting the message across to the people that this is not so?
Well, this is one of the things that Ground Zero Week tried to achieve as an education campaign, was attempting to bring to a broader general understanding the fact that our defense in this country has the capacity of killing every single person in the world at least 30 times over, and Russia's defense has a similar capacity. Now, once we're killed once, what does overkill matter? And the evacuation plans, you just looking at the time frame that the government gives to evacuate, say from New York City, and it's just horrifying how long it takes just a rush hour to move people from one place to another. Imagine getting the entire population from one place to another.
That's very true. Well, right now we're going to see another film clip from Atomic Cafe, this one dealing with what would happen if the bomb dropped. Just duck and cover. Well, as we all know, we can't duck and cover from the bomb. I mean, we'd be sent up into space as missiles, and we'd
melt.
We'd melt or whatever, and all the horrible stories that you have heard or haven't heard. And what I was wondering, how is the average person going to fight back? What can they do? They feel so helpless. They don't know where to get involved or who to write.
Well, there's a really wide range of things that anybody can do. You can do something in the privacy of your own home, like write to your congresspeople, your senators, to President Reagan, to Caspar Weinberger, whoever you want to write to. You can write to magazines and newspapers replying to articles that they have, however you feel about the issue. If you want to get more actively involved, there are meetings very frequently that are advertised in local papers, like around here. The Village Voice covers the anti-nuke movement quite well. There are, in New York, one of the most active groups around is the Mobilization for Survival, and they can be contacted at 673-1808 is the New York local group of the Mobilization for Survival. And one's involvement can be with any group. The June 12th Coalition brought together a wide range of union groups, third world groups, church groups, as well as the peace groups.
Yeah, I understand there was a large campaign where people would send telegrams to the White House. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, we had a Western Union mailgram that the June 12th Rally Committee decided on a one-sentence wording that was sent to President Reagan, saying that we don't want our tax money used for military spending. We want it used for human needs spending. Those were distributed at the rally, and people signed their names and phone numbers.
How many do you think went out?
It's really hard to say. I know there were like 7 big sackfuls collected at the rally, however many that was.
Was there any feedback from the White House? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
You probably got caught up in the office mail. They probably get so much mail. There is a disarmament conference going on now, but yet, if you listen to the news, we really aren't getting a play-by-play type of information coming across. We don't know what's happening. I mean, how can you find out what's happening? Would you have any suggestions to that?
Well, the Disarmament Conference at the United Nations is winding up at the moment, and I think we might hear a little bit about the conclusion of what's happening there. Otherwise, within one thing that people can do, there are many motions in the New York City Council, for instance, around the disarmament issue. On May 25th, Mary Friedlander, a city councilwoman, introduced a resolution to support the Freeze campaign in New York City and to call for June 12th to be Peace Day in New York. And a few days later, Councilwoman Susan Alter introduced the rejection of Reagan's civil defense plan, or the federal civil defense plan for the city of New York, which is the evacuation plans. And both of those motions passed. Mm-hmm. There are often motions within the city government, state government, as well as federal government around the disarmament issue and against nuclear power as well. The Freeze campaign is organizing, is trying to get a freeze ballot referendum on the November ballot, and people will start to notice Freeze campaign.
Would that
people
have anything
collecting
to do with
signatures.
The Kennedy Hatfield?
Yes, that is the Kennedy Hatfield.
Oh, it is. It's
well,
going to be.
It's a referendum, like in California, and I think it's 9 states at the moment across the country so far have a referendum on calling for a freeze, which comes from the initiative comes from the Freeze campaign, and Kennedy and Hatfield picked up from the Freeze campaign's initiative.
And New York is included in one of those
No,
states?
New York is not yet included. New Jersey is included, and Rhode Island is the only other Eastern Seaboard state included on the that has that on the ballot at the moment. But New York, the Freeze campaign in New York wants to organize for New York to become one of those states.
Now, let's say the average voter would like to vote on something like that. Who can they write to or call up to ask for a referendum?
Write to their congresspeople and senators, mm-hmm. and then when they see the freeze, they sign the Freeze campaign petitions.
Part of Ground Zero Week was a civil disobedience contingency of it, and we have some footage from that, which we'd like you to take a look at now.
Today's acts of civil disobedience underscores the commitment that was put on display Saturday in Central Park.
I'm committed to do this because I feel that just talking and marching is all of that's great, but I think we have to continue to make more and more commitments, and I don't know what's going to be, but we have to do that.
What did it take for you to come to a decision to consciously do an act that would get you arrested?
Well, because I think it was an appropriate time when we were appearing under 5 missions who are the big bombers, and that was enough to do it.
Today I have an opportunity to say to the Soviet Union the same thing I say to my own government. Nothing justifies the use of nuclear weapons.
We want them to stop building nuclear weapons so that our children will not die.
Our people keep telling us to tell it to the Russians, so that's what we're doing today. We're also telling it to the Americans.
Arrest is a Class B misdemeanor. Disorderly conduct is a violation, a much lesser charge.
Welcome back. We just saw some clips from the rally and also from some civil disobedience actions that were taking place around the city. And you wanted to correct me on something I just said.
Yeah, the civil disobedience action took place on June 14th. It was the Monday after the June 12th rally and the second Monday of the special session. And what the CD action did was to dramatize, or its aims were to dramatize the seriousness of the issue by blockading the United Nations, the missions to the United Nations of the 5 major nuclear powers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for correcting me. Now that the June 12th rally is over, all the groups have sort of dispersed, the delegates have sort of gone back to their own little grassroots organizations. What can we expect next? Anything as big as a rally or a mass education type thing?
Well, there will be mass actions in the future, but each of the different groups involved in organizing the June 12th rally have now gone back to their regular organizing, back to their areas, and are now organizing mainly education campaigns, as well as the specifics, broader campaigns within their own organizations than they had for specifically mobilizing around June 12th. The next days to look out for on August 6th to 9th, which is Hiroshima and Nagasaki days, there will be a lot of different actions around the city and around the country. The next major national mobilization hasn't been decided on yet, but there will be one in the future. But more important is all the grassroots activities going on in each of the areas that went to that were represented in the demonstration across the country from coast to coast, and in those areas that weren't represented at the rally, and in each of the organizations that sponsored or endorsed the rally, and those who didn't as well. And we hope that people will continue to get involved actively in.
There seem to be plenty of areas where the average person can just get involved and say something and make themselves heard.
And it's really important that people do in whatever way they feel comfortable in getting involved, whether it is just in writing a letter to a congressperson or a senator or the president, or in actually getting involved in organizing local demonstrations, local petition drives, support from your union branch or within your church group, or whatever anybody feels is comfortable for themselves to be doing is really worth doing. It's not an issue that we can sit back and let others decide for us. Mm-hmm. It's our future, and we should all take an active part in making sure that it's a safe and healthy one.
Yeah. Can you suggest any kind of reading materials or any other kind of sources that people could go to if they want to get in-depth information about, let's say, radioactivity or the effects of bombs?
There's a lot of reading material. There's a new book by Harvey Wasserman and Norman Solomon called Killing Our Own, which is about the effects of radiation within this country. There's there are a lot of books just in your local bookstore on the nuclear.
You can probably find a paperback book on it.
A paperback book. We Almost Lost Detroit is the book that.
That's a situation that people are forgetting about, that the nuclear reactor in Detroit had almost melted down, as in 3 Mile Island, but we remember 3 Mile Island because it happened a very short time ago.
The film, The China Syndrome, was actually taken to some extent from that book, We Almost Lost Detroit, or some of the issues within it that cited the references that were the specific references to which the script alluded to. And it's a scary book.
I know. So the anti-nuclear movement and the disarmament movement are sisters, and if you're interested in one, there are a whole bunch of other organizations that you can go into.
I think it's very important to really link the two movements together. Many people only look at one or the other, but the links between the two are very important. The countries, for instance, India, Africa, South America, who are starting to build a nuclear power base, are getting the potential to build bombs, and the links between the two issues that many people call separate are very strong and should be taken into consideration.
Well, Nina, I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your viewpoints with us. And if you care to write Videowave at P.O. Box 9, Homecrest Station, Brooklyn, New York 11229, we can probably send you some information about where to go and how to get involved. And thank you for watching the show. Good evening.
Well, a perplexing and difficult question indeed. Fortunately solved by this marvelous book for children from the government, Your Chance to Live. Yes, this is available from your local government bookstore or from the government printing office. It's used throughout the public school system in the United States. And as you can see, it is copiously illustrated with drawings that are much nicer than mine. Now, inside is a full explanation of nuclear fusion, nuclear fission, complete rundown of how nuclear power works, and the history of nuclear development. For example, here is a charming drawing of Madame Curie lying dead underneath her laboratory table.